My name is Jana O'Connor, and I will be your host for the Pension Coalition's Town Hall event. Joining me is Brendan George, senior partner in the actuarial firm George & Bell. Brendan was hired by the Labour Coalition to do a thorough analysis of the local authorities' pension plan and the public service pension plan. We're also joined by the elected leaders from some of the province's largest labour organizations: Heather Smith from United Nurses of Alberta, Gil McGowan from the Alberta Federation of Labour, Marley Roberts from the Canadian Union of Public Employees, and Elizabeth Ballerman from the Health Sciences Association of Alberta. One of the best features of this telephone town hall, is that you have an opportunity to ask our actuary, Brendan George, or any of our Labour leaders a live question at any point during the discussion. If you are in the room, all you have to do is step up to the floor microphone on either side at the front. If you are on the phone, please press *3 on your phone at any point, and that will let our operators know you'd like to ask a question. It's that simple. You press *3 at any point to ask a question. You'll be placed in contact with an operator who will then put you in queue to ask your question. Now, to start off with, I'd like to ask Gil to give us an overview of the government's pension proposals and why we're holding this town hall tonight. Over to you, Gil.
Thanks, Jana. As most of our listeners know, back in September, our provincial finance minister, Doug Horner, laid out what he described as quote, a new vision for pensions in Alberta. It's a vision he wants to flesh out with legislation this spring and implement starting January 1st, 2016. Under the minister's plan, all existing provisions in Alberta pension plans that allow long service employees to retire a few years early with unreduced or only slightly reduced pensions will be eliminated. Specifically, they're going to get rid of what we call the 85 factor. Under this provision, employees whose age and years of service add up to the number 85 can retire with an unreduced pension, even if they haven't reached the official retirement age of 65. This has been a particularly important benefit for people with physically demanding jobs like firefighters and emergency room nurses. It's also a benefit that public sector workers have been paying for with their monthly contributions. But under the minister's plan, it will be gone as of January 1st, 2016. The government is also planning to eliminate guaranteed cost of living adjustments for retirement benefits. As it stands right now, pensions paid to retirees covered by big public sector pension plans like the local authorities pension plan or the public service pension plan, these plans are adjusted for 60% of inflation every year. But under the new rules proposed by government, adjustments will only be made up to 50% of inflation, and even those adjustments will not be guaranteed. They'll only be paid in years when investments have performed particularly well in the plan, so pensioners could go for years without any even minimal inflation adjustments. What this means is that the purchasing power of our pensions won't keep up with the rising cost of living. The longer you live, the less your pension will be worth. So taken together, the government's proposed changes will slash the value of pensions earned by Alberta public sector workers by 25% or more on benefits earned after the implementation date of January 1st, 2016. To put it another way, if the government is successful in ramming these changes through, more than 200,000 working Albertans who are currently covered by the plans in question will have to work longer and pay more for benefits that are smaller and less secure. As we will see when we look at the pension calculator we've developed, younger workers are going to be particularly hard hit by these changes, but older workers and retirees are going to have their retirement security compromised as well. The really frustrating part of this whole situation is that these very deep cuts are entirely unjustified. As we'll see in a few minutes, Alberta's pension plans are healthy and in fact getting healthier. There simply is no justification for this attack on pensions or retirement security for thousands of Alberta workers. So that's why we've organized this town hall, and it's why we need public sector workers from across the province, people affected by these changes, to stand up and help us defend their pension plans.
Thank you, Gil. One of the key aspects of the government's proposals that the Labour Coalition is particularly concerned about is the cap on contribution rates. I'd now like to ask Elizabeth Ballerman, President of the Health Sciences Association of Alberta, to briefly explain why that is of particular concern. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Jana. Well, all of you who are members of the pension plan know that your pension plan, contrary to what has been implied, is not a gift. You contribute to that pension plan and the employer contributes as well. That's part of the deal. It is not a gift, it is part of your overall compensation package. However, we all know that if we don't put enough into a pension plan, there's not going to be enough there to fuel the benefits that we all want to take out when we retire. And the proposal, and this may be one of the most insidious proposals of this whole plan that the government is putting forward, is that they want to keep the right, regardless of, they say, you know, the boards can have the right to run the plan, but we're going to have the right and keep the right to set a cap on the pension contributions. Now, your pension boards have their pulse on your plan. They know exactly when they need to raise rates or when they can lower them. Now, admittedly, things have not been so great, so they've been having to go up. What they want to do, though, is to say, we're going to put a cap on it. And too bad if you actually have to raise rates in order to maintain your benefits. If you reach that cap, that is not going to be possible. And we're going to take that right away from your pension board. So the reality is, with such a cap, it is possible that your boards are going to be put in the position of having to cut your benefits. If we have another real crisis like 2008 meltdown, and there's a cap on there that does not allow your boards to raise the contribution rates that you share with your employer through your compensation package, that they would actually have to cut your benefits and possibly even cut the benefits of those people who are already on pension. And that was one of the promises that they said that, oh no, it's not going to affect anybody who's already retired. The minister himself responded to a question that I asked him when he made this proposal, that they could not necessarily guarantee those benefits for pensioners. So that is why this could really undermine your plan, and it's really, really important that your boards have the opportunity to set those rates based on what is needed at the time.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Now I'd like to ask Marley Roberts, President of QP Alberta, to talk about the size of the pensions in question. What do we consider to be a modest pension? What's it like for retirees on a fixed income? Marley?
Thanks, Jana. Conservatives love to talk about how rich our pension plans are. Sometimes they call them gold-plated. I have talked to retirees and asked them to see their gold plate, and I haven't seen one. I can't find a gold plate. The truth is that there is nothing gold-plated about our pension plans. If you work for a municipality, a school district, a healthcare facility, you likely belong to the local authority's pension plan. The average pension in that plan is around $15,000 per year. That's per year. If you belong to the public sector pension plan, which is mainly direct provincial government employees, the average pension plan is even lower, about $12,400 per year. When Conservatives tell me our pension plan is gold-plated, I ask them to imagine life on this kind of income, $12,400 per year or $15,000 per year with a few thousand extra from the Canadian pension plan. I challenge them to look at public employees and to look at them in the eye and tell them that's a gold-plated salary. No sensible person, when confronted with these figures, believes our pensioners are living well. And you know, it's not like an 82-year-old senior can take a part-time job at Tim Hortons to supplement their pension or anywhere else. When you get to a certain point in life, you have to stop working. And we shouldn't be afraid to say it. You deserve to stop working. And remember that the pension figures I just brought forward here, not proposed, but brought forward, they're not a proposal, they're true, they're actual figures. That's in today's dollars. So what the Redford government is proposing here is a pension plan where the cost of living increases may not happen. So when you're young and working, We can live with a wage that doesn't go up with inflation for a year or two. But when we retire, we're signing on to a pension for 25 to 30 years. Who can live on what they made 25 to 30 years ago, especially when the starting pension may be as little as $1,000 a month? Conservatives, usually those who make a lot more money than our members, sometimes talk about public sector plans being unjustifiable, since a lot of private sector workers don't have these pension plans. You know, it was their governments, though, who fought very hard to reduce and eliminate some private sector pension plans in the first place. Reducing pensions will recreate a class of seniors who have worked hard their whole life and built this province, and find themselves having to retire in poverty. Shame. A good pension plan prevents this. A good pension plan is about deferring wages and pooling money to invest and to save for our golden years. It's about looking out for each other and all of us being better off as a result.
Thank you. Thank you, Marley. Once again, I would like to welcome those who have just joined us to the Alberta Federation of Labour's Pension Coalition Town Hall. My name is Jana O'Connor, and I will be your host this evening. Throughout this telephone town hall, we will be asking for your opinion on several questions. Those of you on the phone can let us know your answer to these poll questions by pressing the number on the phone keypad that corresponds to your answer. Stay tuned, those are coming soon. The government has claimed that their proposals are necessary in order to bring these pension plans back in the black. I'm going to ask Heather Smith, President of United Nurses of Alberta, to tell us about the plan that's in place already that is paying off the entirety of the unfunded liability. Heather?
Thank you, Jenna. Unfunded liabilities are not debt. An unfunded liability is the difference between the future pension payments and the present value of the pension plans. They're really best estimates, and even the best fund managers cannot accurately predict the future. Like other investments, pensions, and Marley mentioned this as well, and Elizabeth, pensions and our pension was hit very hard by the 2008 economic crisis. At that time, our pension, LAPP funding, dropped to almost 75%. But since that time, the health of the plan has steadily been improving. Last year, LAPP was 81% funded and earned $2.2 billion returns on investment, almost an 11% return. The public service pension plan was 76% funded and earned $780 million in 2012, an 11% return on investment. What comes into this is something known as the discount rate. And the discount rate is what actuaries assume the plan, how much the plan investments will grow in future years. And a lower discount rate means higher liabilities because you're expecting less returns. The discount rate is used to translate future pension benefits into a present-day obligation used to compare to the pension's current assets. If the discount rate is too low, then the pension plan might look like it's in worse shape than it really is because the value of the future pension obligations will look like they outweigh present-day assets. The LAPP uses a 5.75% discount rate, and a case can be made that the LAPP discount rate is too low. For example, other pension plans use a much higher discount rate, meaning that their future obligations or future unfunded liability is less. Public service, for instance, uses 6.4, and the Teachers' Retirement Fund uses a 7% discount rate. Now, in terms of an unfunded liability, we went, as I said, from 75% in 2008 to 81% in 2010, and in fact, returns in 2012 and the expected returns in 2013 were even higher. A friend next to me, our pension expert, in fact suggests that with no changes to our plan, there could be a complete removal of the unfunded liability and the additional contributions that we've been making, about 3.75% for us and 3.75 for the employer, that can be completely gone in 10 years. I just remind some people that in 1992, the Conservative government claimed there was a pension crisis then and an unfunded liability, and at that time suggested it was totally appropriate to take some 40 years to pay off that liability, which disappeared within a decade. In terms of Mr. Horner, the Finance Minister Horner, suggestion that our current plans are unsustainable because of an unfunded liability, I suggest that Finance Minister Horner's new vision for how to correct our unfunded liabilities and future liabilities is blind to the facts.
Thank you, Heather. And thank you to everyone who's participating. We welcome those just joining us on the phone. This is the telephone town hall with the Alberta Labour Coalition on Pensions to update you on the changes that are happening to your pension plan. For the people on the phone, anytime you have a question you'd like to ask our panelists, Gil, Heather, Elizabeth, Marley, and Brendan, please press *3 on your phone to get online to ask a question. And for our participants here with us, please approach the microphones in the front of the room to ask a question. Now, let's go to a poll question. I'm going to read out a question and then the responses you can choose from. Please wait to hear all of the responses before choosing one. You can only vote for one answer, and you vote by pressing the number on your phone keypad that corresponds to your answer. For those of you in the room, remember, you're using your old school technology and thinking your answer. So now please listen on the first reading, and then I'll give a second reading just in case you've missed. So the first question is, how important is your pension to your retirement plans? Press 1 if your pension is very important. Press 2 if your pension is somewhat important. Press 3 if your pension is not really that important. Press 4 if your pension is not at all important. Press 5 if you're not sure. And again, the question is, how important is your pension to your retirement plans? Press 1 if your pension is very important. Press 2 if your pension is somewhat important. Press 3 if your pension is not really important. Press 4 if your pension is not at all important. And press 5 if you're not sure. And we'll have those poll results for you in a moment. Now, I'd like to pass it off to Brendan George, Senior Partner at actuarial firm George & Bell. Brendan has done a thorough analysis of the local authorities' pension plan and the public service pension plan, and prepared a study on the sustainability of those plans. Brendan, how are things looking for the two plans?
Thanks, Jana. As Heather mentioned, we ran a study on both plans, the local authorities pension plan and the public service pension plan, and really looked at what would these plans look like for the next 25 years if no changes were made. So keep the benefits exactly as they are, what contributions would be needed under a reasonable set of assumptions. Of course, it's impossible to predict the future, so you need to make some reasonable assumptions around investment returns, etc. And based on the analysis we performed, we would think that the current contribution rates, which are close to a total of 25% in both plans, will probably be needed for about the next 10 years. So as Heather said, the unfunded liability needs to be paid off. That takes some time. So probably about 10 years of contribution rates fairly similar to what is being put in now, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower, depending on good or bad investment results. And then after that, we think the plans could get to a more, let's call it, longer-term contribution rate, which is probably closer to 20% for both LAPP and PSPP. Again, you know, at this point, they're estimates, but we think in 10 years' time, you'll get to a more steady state contribution rate closer to 20% for members and employer together.
Thank you, Brendan. Now, for people on the phone, if you'd like to ask a question, press *3 to get online to do so. And we'll go to our first question. We have Ronalda with the UNA Union in Edmonton, and she has a question for us about taking retirement at 55. Ronalda, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you. The question that I have pertains to those of us with 5, 10, 15, 20 years of service. We're not quite ready to retire, obviously. So we chose a profession in nursing to serve Albertans. We were provided pension details and benefits, etc., the details of the benefit program at the time of our employment commencement. And to me, that entails kind of like a quasi-contract. So we accepted the appointment, and we've made goals in our personal lives, family goals, etc., based on this quasi-contract. Now that the government is breaching this agreement and forcing us to work into our to the age of 65, is this not possibility to have a class action lawsuit? Because they are breaching the conditions and forcing us to work into our senior years when many of us might not even be capable of doing such?
Thank you for your question, Ronalda. Who may I turn to field this question? Gil McGowan?
Yeah, it's Gil McGowan, President of the Alberta Federation of Labour, and Ronaldo made a number of very important points, the first of which is that there are literally thousands and thousands of Albertans who have made their retirement plans in good faith based on what they assumed would be available for them in terms of pension income. This is what we call the pension promise. It's a promise that governments have made to their employees for generations now. They say that in return for your hard work, as part of your compensation package, we're going to give you a retirement benefit that you can actually count on and plan on. What's happening with the changes being proposed by the Redford government is that they're breaking this pension promise that they've made to thousands and thousands of current workers and retirees. It is a form of a contract. I can't say explicitly in response to Ronaldo's question that we could launch a class action lawsuit. What I can say is that the unions involved in our labor coalition on pensions are meeting with lawyers and have been ever since the minister announced the changes back in September, and we're putting together legal strategies that could include constitutional challenges, and certainly we will do everything we can in the scope of the courts to make sure that the pension promise is protected.
Thank you, Gil. Any thoughts from anyone else? All right, thank you, Ronaldo, very much for your question. And a reminder to please press *3 at any time on the phone to ask a question. And if there are any questions from anyone here in the room, please do approach the microphone to let us know. And now we'll take another question from the phone. We have Wendy, also with the UNA in Edmonton, and she has a question for us about the 85 factor. Does it apply to Calgary pensions? Hello, Wendy. Please go ahead with your question.
Hi, just to clarify, it wasn't a question about whether or not the 85 factor applies to Calgary. I already know that. I'm already collecting my LA pension. The first part of my question is, can these changes affect what amount you're currently receiving through your LA pension benefits? Can that be reduced by the changes? And the second question is, if you happen to be on short or long-term disability and reach an age where you're eligible to draw your Canada pension, is it beneficial or to your benefit, I guess, to then fill out the paperwork to go onto Canada pension, or is it more beneficial to stay with your disability plan for as long as you're disabled and maybe not able to return to work? Those are my two concerns. Thank you. Heather or Brendan, anybody can answer that for me. Thanks.
Thank you, Wendy. So for the first part of Wendy's question?
I'll answer the first part.
Heather,
sure.
thank you.
Wendy, thanks for calling. What Elizabeth was explaining in terms of the cap and having a hard cap, if we run into another financial crisis such as 2000 or equivalent to 2008, the cap means that We could not exceed that in terms of contributions. And if you can't exceed the cap, or if you can't increase contributions, the only other option is to reduce benefits. Reduce benefits on a go-forward basis, but it may even be necessary to reduce the benefits of individuals currently receiving pensions. That's what Elizabeth was saying when the minister could not, in fact, guarantee that current pensioners would not be affected. In terms of the second part, in terms of whether or not, if you're on disability, whether you should go on to use the CPP or stay on the disabilities, I think you may need to speak to an individual explaining your specific case and ask for an analysis of what exactly it would mean to you personally if you were to do that.
Anyone else? Gail, please.
Yeah, just to add one comment in relation to the subject of disability pensions. One of the things that the minister and the government have said about their proposed changes is that they're necessary to save government as an employer money. So they've reduced the benefits, then the government will have to spend less on these pension plans. In particular, they say that they'll save a lot of money as an employer by eliminating the 85 factor, which allows long service employees to retire a few years early with unreduced pensions. But I think that this may end up being a false savings because a lot of those long service employees, especially who work in physically demanding jobs, if they're denied earlier retirement as a result of the 85 factor, they may end up simply applying for disability pensions because they're physically no longer able to work. So, the government may save a few pennies by getting rid of the 85 factor, but they'll have to spend more on disability pensions. So it's, the savings that the government is claiming may be false savings.
Thank you. And thank you, Wendy, for your questions. Now, I have the result of our first poll ready. The question was, how important is your pension to your retirement plans? The answers we received are that 93% of you said your pension is very important, 6% said your pension is somewhat important, 1% said your pension is not really that important, 0% said if your pension is not at all important, and 0% also were not sure. 0% were also not sure. That's right. Okay, so now we'll go to the next poll question, and I'll try to handle that one in a more smooth fashion. Please listen to all the options before placing your vote. And the next question is, are you willing to contact your local MLA to tell him or her about what these changes to your pension plan will mean to you? Press 1 if you are willing to email your MLA. Press 2 if you are willing to call your MLA. Press 3 if you are willing to write a letter to your MLA. Press 4 if you're willing to do all of the above to contact your MLA. Press 5 if you are not willing to contact your MLA. So we've spoken people in the room, to the mics in the front, people on the phones pressing *3 to get online to ask a question. Now we do have a question from Mary with the union HSAA in Grand Prairie. Mary, please go ahead with your question.
Hi there. So we all know that this government is like a steamroller and, doesn't stop at anything. So I'm just wondering, have you considered taking a strike vote from your members? Because their alternative is either work until they're 65 or work until they're 67.
Thank you, Mary. Who would like to field an answer to Mary's question?
Well, let me start that, given it's a member of my union. Hi, Mary. We are considering all possible options. Whether a strike, you know as well as we all do that they've taken away your legal right to strike. So, and you know what the latest legislation, you're absolutely right with the steamrollering. So, I've got to be a little bit cagey on the answer on that. And I think everybody here in the room and on the phone understands the need for us to be a little cautious as to how we answer that. Let's just say we're considering all options.
And that was Elizabeth Ballerman from Health Sciences Association of Alberta. Heather Smith also has an answer for you, Mary.
Yeah, I think under Bill 45, that was like a $500 fine, wasn't it, for the question?
Yeah, it might have just cost us $4 million.
Yeah, and it's just cost HSA about $2.5 million, and a 3-month suspension of dues. But there is another option, and I just would remind people that March 3rd is going to be the opening of the legislature, and I think a really nice show of Albertans at the legislature for, there's a whole variety of reasons, including all this pension stuff, would be a healthy exercise to undertake.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And Marley, you have a response as well?
Yes, I'd like to respond as well. In regards to that, there is a lot of things and campaigns starting in regards to the pension plans. And as Heather said, in regards to showing up at the legislature, but there's many other things that we're working on and that we can go forward with. To tell this government, number one, you can't roll us over with that steamroller. We are going to fight back. And number two, you are responsible to the citizens in Alberta who elected you. So don't take away our rights, because we will fight back. So everybody participate and help. Thank you.
Thank you, Marley. And another word from Elizabeth?
Thanks. One addition. Remember, when they talk about taxpayers, they never talk about citizens. We are taxpayers, we are citizens, and we do vote. And we need to make sure that our politicians understand that how they behave on these questions will determine how we vote. And if we're all out there, they are going to start worrying about their seats.
Thank you. And a reminder now of the website address as well. Truthaboutalbertapensions.ca is a great place to get started fighting back. Truthaboutalbertapensions.ca. And now I'd like to talk to Brendan again. For those who've just called in, Brendan George, senior partner at George & Bell, conducted a thorough actuarial study of the sustainability of Alberta's largest public sector pension plans. He also helped design a pension calculator that can help you figure out the direct impact that the government's proposals might have to your retirement plans. And the calculator can be found at the aforementioned website, truthaboutalbertapensions.ca. I'm going to ask Brendan to take us step by step through the process of using this valuable tool, so please bear with us as we do that step-by-step process through the pension calculator. Brendan, can you please tell us about the calculator? For those of you who are not in the room, Brendan is crossing over to the calculator podium. Thank you, Brendan.
And for those of you on the phones, what I'm doing right now is I'll just pull up the calculator for those of you in the room, and I will spend maybe 2 minutes just going through it. If you are on the phone, maybe what you can do, if you are near a laptop or a device that you can get on the internet, you could go to truthaboutalbertapensions.ca, and the first page that comes up, you've really got 4 simple questions that you can put in, and I'll just put something in as we go along here. You put in your date of birth, so day/month/year. Just give me a sec here.
And not a time to be coy and lie about our age.
You know what? I'll put in my own date of birth just to give it away. Expected date of retirement. I may be lying about my date of birth. Expected date of retirement. This is wishful thinking, but we'll make up a date here. How's that? Again, day/month/year. Let's say 2030 if I'm lucky. Pensionable service on retirement. You put in years, so maybe I'll work 30 years total. Again, wishful thinking. And an annual salary, let's just say 65,000. So literally that should take you less than a minute. You hit next, and the next step 2 will just ask you for your name. I'll just put B and your surname, your postal code. I'll put in something there. and your email. I'm sending this to my wife. She'll appreciate it. You hit submit, and there you go. So the answers that you get, if you've gone through this exercise, what you'll see is dollar figures. And the very first dollar figure at the top basically says, if the government goes through with their proposed changes, what is the dollar monthly pension? And again, I'll focus, it is monthly. You got to, at the top it does say each month, so just remember that. At your retirement date, so when I'm retiring, if I'd been in either LAP or public service pension plan, so it does apply to both plans or either one. At retirement, in this example, I stand to lose $714 a month. That's in the future, but sounds like a pretty big number to me. Then there are a few other numbers on the page. In the first column, as you go down, you've got 10 years later and 20 years later. Those numbers will be a little bit bigger, and the reason being these basically build in the loss of the indexing. So Gil talked about this earlier, the change from a 60% to a 50% of inflation on your pension. On the day you retire, that doesn't matter, but 10 and 20 years later, that does matter. So you'll see that those numbers will grow over time. And then on the right-hand side, really will be the biggest numbers in terms of the loss or the difference, which really represents if something goes wrong, and I think Heather mentioned it, if you have another crisis like 2008, potentially there's no indexing for some period of time. And the right-hand column, the numbers we have up here, 955 and 1226, would be if I get no indexing on my pensions in future, what is the loss? So, for someone that's still 20, 30 years, 20-odd years away from retirement, these numbers can be big. I don't know if there's any other questions, comments from the group that we'd like to address on the calculator.
Just repeat the monthly, yeah.
Yeah, the monthly example here at retirement, $714. So it's a monthly number, a big number. Obviously, this is based on 20 years in the future, but it's still a big number.
Thank you very much, Brendan. And again, that calculator is available at truthaboutalbertapensions.ca. And now we are going to move back to the phone for another question from Dawn, the Firefighters Union in Edmonton, and a question about costs for city and whether we should be including the mayor. So, Dawn, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, my question is that has Coalition of Unions looked into talking with the cities, Edmonton and Calgary, and what the potential costs to them are going to be if they force firefighters to work until they're 65? Their sick time and WCB and long-term disability is going to climb in huge amounts, and that could cost the cities a lot of money. So you would think they would be interested in joining this fight with the coalition.
Thank you, Dawn, for your question. Gil McGowan would like to answer first.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Don. It's a good question, and I want to reassure you that, yes, in fact, we do intend to have conversations with the Mayor of Edmonton, the Mayor of Calgary, and in fact, many of the employers whose employees are covered by the various pension plans that are going to be affected. We've put together, as a coalition, we've put together a pretty ambitious campaign which includes membership education opportunities like the telephone town hall tonight. You may have heard that we're doing some radio advertising across the province, but we're also lobbying decision makers. So we'll be lobbying members of the Legislative Assembly who make the decisions from the provincial government on these plans, but we're also going to be lobbying employers because we think that they have a lot to lose with these changes as well. Because keep in mind, here in Alberta, public sector workers are not always the best paid workers in the economy, and a lot of our employers are competing for talented workers with the energy sector, with the construction sector, and in many cases we can't compete on wages, And so public sector employers have, if they want to attract and retain good staff, they need to provide decent benefits, and the pension is one of the best incentives that they can provide to attract and keep people at work. So, we're going to be making the argument to employers, like municipal employers, that they have a lot to lose by when the government guts these pension plans. It'll make it that much more difficult for them to attract workers and to keep them.
Thank you, Gil. And Marley Roberts, you had a point to make as well on that question?
Yes, thank you, Dawn, for that question. I'm going to take us back. CUPE had a booth at the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association. And at the booth, we put together an information package for employers. Now, realizing that Alberta Urban Municipalities is only municipalities, we had very positive reception from the employers when they came by the booth to talk to us. They took the package, had a lot of questions, and as I said, a very positive response. Their concern, and Brother Gill referenced that, is retention and recruitment. And as a coalition, both as CUPE and as the Labour Coalition, we'll be reaching out to more than just municipal employers to get their responses. But I can say the initial response that we received from municipalities was very positive, and they wanted more information and asked to be mailed more information.
Thank you, Marley. And Elizabeth Ballerman has also asked to be heard on your question, Dawn.
Thanks, Jenna, and thanks, Dawn. I think your point is incredibly important. Many of the jobs that our public sector workers do, whether it's firefighters, the paramedics, and healthcare professionals I represent, Heather's and Marley's members, do really difficult physical jobs. And absolutely, we need to think about and make sure the employers think about what their costs are going to be in disability premiums and pension payments that Gil already referenced. But much more importantly, I think, or at least for our members, is look, as far as I'm concerned, retiring in dignity does not mean retiring when your body just can't hold you up anymore, that you're now so disabled that your body is worn out by the work that you can't even enjoy the years that you have left. We should be able to retire with dignity, with decent pensions.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, Dawn, for your question. We are excited to say that we have a live in the room question, but we just have one more phone question, and then we'll get right to you. Thank you. Our question on the phone will be from Curtis from HSAA, affiliated with HSAA in Calgary, and a question about the 85 factor. Curtis, please go ahead with your question.
Thank you very much for taking my question. I've just realized that you've answered my question by going through the pension calculator on that website. So thank you very much for taking the time to plan as well as you have to give us that much more information to know where we're possibly headed.
Excellent. Thank you, Curtis. And a reminder again, that website is truthaboutalbertapensions.ca. And now we will move to our question here in the room. If you wouldn't mind please telling us your name and affiliation, and then go ahead with your question.
My name's Peggy Morton. I'm a retired CUPE member and past president of Local 2111 of CUPE. Before I ask my question, I just want to encourage pensioners to get involved in this fight. It's our fight too. My question, I read your report, the actuarial report, and I read all the propaganda from the government, the disinformation from the government, and it occurred to me in reading those that in fact the government has done a lot to destabilize our pension plan, and that there's a lot of things, concrete steps that they could take which would help to stabilize the pension plan, and that includes things like putting an end to hiring people as casuals, as temps, as people with low FTEs who aren't even entitled to join the pension plan, as people with FTEs between, say, 0.4 and 0.8 in healthcare, who may not make enough money to feel that they can even join the pension plan. And having done all these things and privatized, many services, and lowered the number of active people, the government now comes and says that the ratio of active to retired is not healthy. And this is directly because of the actions they have taken. And it really occurs to me that when I started working in the hospital, there were many of my members, women who had not even been allowed to join the pension plan. And even though we now think that's antiquated, in fact, there are still many, many workers in the public sector, women who are not able to join the pension plan. And so there's many things this government can do, and it should be forced to do them.
Thank you. Thank you, Peggy, for coming forward. And does anyone have any comments that they'd like to make to what Peggy said? Is it Elizabeth Ballerman?
I think Peggy raises a hugely important issue, the casualization of work, privatization. As we speak, Alberta Health Services has a request for proposals out there that would take about another 1,000 or so members out of the plan by privatizing lab services, medical lab services here in Edmonton. And that is an issue particularly for our union, but we should think about what an issue that is for the pension plan. One of the things that we as a coalition have said is, rather than clawing back pensions from those people who've got some decent pensions, why aren't we working to make sure that every person who works for a living in this province gets a decent pension so that they can retire? So we need to look at extending the CPP. Our government had an opportunity to do that, and they basically kiboshed that, and they're bowing to the likes of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, the very places where our pension members are going to be spending those pension dollars. And so, let's make sure everybody gets a pension rather than clawing it back from those who have one.
Thank you. And Heather Smith, you would like to weigh in as well?
Yeah, Peggy, very good comments. And in fact, we raised that in conversations we've had in a subcommittee looking at sustainability over the past year. The number of individuals that are out there already, employees, and that are not contributing, and what can be done to do that. And the minister certainly has said that that is a huge issue, the ratio of the actives to the retireds. What is another concern, though, is that the government's very proposals and the potential that the plan will become even less attractive may mean even more avoidance of participants, which will further complicate in terms of fewer actives in the plan. So, in fact, the government's own proposals are part of the destabilizing that can occur if they are allowed to go through.
Thank you. Thank you all for your questions and thoughtful comments. Now, we do have the results for the second poll, and the question was, are you willing to contact your local MLA to tell him or her about what these changes to your pension plan will mean to you? 42% said you were willing to email your MLA. 6% said you were willing to call your MLA. 8% said you were willing to write a letter to your MLA. 38% said you're willing to do all of the above. And 6% said you're not willing to contact your MLA. And a reminder again that we will have a staff member collecting names and contact information at the back of the room at the end of this evening's town hall for those of you here in the room who would also like to register your willingness to participate. And now we do have another question from the floor. If you could please state your name, affiliation, and question for us.
My name is Rosemary Kostiuk. I'm Vice President of QP Local 3550. And my question is it my understanding that Finance Minister Horner has declined or to meet with the coalition? Is that correct?
Who will answer Rosemary's question? Marley Roberts. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that question, Rosemary. The Finance Minister, Minister of Treasury and Finance, Doug Horner, we did have a meeting set up to meet with him. I believe it was the 13th of this month, and he canceled that meeting. We do not have another date set yet in regards to meet with the minister, and that is concerning to the coalition in regards to he needs to meet with us. So we are waiting for another date, and it's my understanding that they haven't been that receptive to get us another date. Gil, would you?
If I could add something, this is Gil from the Federation of Labor. The minister's refusal to meet with us to discuss the government's proposed pension changes simply underlines what has become one of the biggest frustrations for us on the labor side of the table, and that is the government's ongoing refusal to negotiate. I think we have to keep in mind that these pension plans are not gifts from the government. They are plans that are paid for jointly by employees, thousands and thousands of them, and their employers, many of whom are not in the provincial government sector, so municipalities, Alberta Health Services, colleges, universities. These are the people and organizations that have paid for these plans, and we feel very strongly that if any changes are going to be made to plan design or to the benefits that are provided by these plans, then those changes need to be negotiated by the people who actually pay for the plans. But instead what we're getting here in Alberta is legislation instead of negotiation. We're getting decisions being dictated from above. And the minister, when he outlined his vision for new pensions, he pointed to other jurisdictions in the country where provincial governments have changed their public sector pension plans. But in every single one of those cases, those changes came after sometimes months, sometimes years of negotiation between the parties, the people who actually pay. But only here in Alberta do we have a government that wants to dictate changes rather than discuss and negotiate them. And that's one of the things that we think really needs to change. The people who pay, and in this case that's the workers, should be making the decisions about how to keep their plans healthy.
Thank you. And thank you, Rosemary, for your question. I'm really pleased to announce that 120 people have already emailed their MLAs from the website, and that website again is truthaboutalbertapensions.ca. Keep those emails sending. And we have another question on the phone. That phone question is coming to us from... I'll take this moment now to remind you again about the website address, truthaboutalbertapensions.ca. Join that fabulous group of people who have already emailed their MLAs. And we do also have a question from the floor, which we'll get to as soon as we have our next question. Actually, we're going to move to our next poll question, please. So get your dialing fingers ready to indicate your choice on the next question. And that question is, would you like the Alberta Labour Coalition on Pensions and your union to contact you about developments on the pension issue? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no, press 3 for not sure. Again, that question is, would you like the Alberta Labour Coalition on Pensions and your union to contact you about developments on the pension issue? Please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no, press 3 for not sure. And now we have a question from the floor. So I'll ask the individual to please name and affiliation and then go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Joel Baker, QP Local 30 here in Edmonton. I have two questions. The first one is kind of a three-part. Has anyone here lobbied the government to bring these Redford issues to be spoken to upon the legislature opening? And if so, whom? And has the MLA assured to bring up the issues of the Alberta Federation of Labour?
Thank you for your question. Who will answer that?
Okay, well, because he addressed the question to the Alberta Federation of Labour, I guess I'll take a first crack at the answer. As Marley mentioned, we have made efforts to meet with the minister and with the premier. So far, we haven't had that chance, but we have met with a number of other MLAs, one of whom is actually in the room with us today, and that's Brian Mason, the leader of the New Democrat opposition. And so we've had extensive meetings with the New Democrat opposition. We've had extensive discussions with the Liberal opposition and also with the Wild Rose opposition. So, all three opposition parties have given us time, and they've all committed to bringing the issue up on the floor of the legislature when it reconvenes on March 3rd.
Thank you. But I think speaking to the Wild Rose is pretty much the same as what we're speaking with Redford. But anyway, my second question. Is there a monetary penalty to accompany removal from the legislature if one was to go and voice an opinion?
Well, yeah. Yeah, during the debate in the legislature on Bill 45 and 46, I was actually escorted from the public galleries because I couldn't quite contain myself when some of the Tory backbenchers were saying scurrilous things about public sector workers. However, I would not encourage other people to do the same. As far as I know, there's not a fine, but we would like while debate is happening in the legislature on issues like the future of our pensions, we'd like to fill the galleries to make sure that our legislatures know they're being watched and that we want to hold them to account. But we want to, have the highest level of decorum as possible. So I would encourage people to come and watch respectfully. But I would also encourage you to follow our website, thetruthaboutalbertapensions.ca. We'll be posting information about all of the events that we plan around our campaign. So for example, as Heather mentioned, there probably will be a rally on the first day of the legislature, which is March 3rd. There will also be a number of information pickets organized by the coalition and individual unions throughout the province. So every time we organize something on the issue of pensions, the information will be on the site, and we encourage you to show your support for your unions and your pension by participating in those events.
Thank you for your questions. And Elizabeth Ballerman has one.
Just a quick addition. We also had a meeting scheduled with both Ministers Horner and Horn, Health and Finance, to talk about, amongst other things, pensions and the privatization of labs. That was supposed to happen just before Christmas, and they canceled it on very short notice. We have also spoken, I have spoken very directly with Mr. Rick Fraser, who is a paramedic, who is a member of the plan, and who is a sitting legislative PC, to express how unhappy his colleagues and his union is with his performance in the legislature.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We do have a question from the phone now. We have Theodora with UNA in Edmonton, and she has a question about what will happen to colleagues. So please, Theodora, go ahead with your question.
Hi, I'm from Local 33 in Edmonton. There are many of us that I'm working with that reached our 85 factor in 2016. Mine personally in May. I'm told that as of January, the 85 factor will be no longer, and we are all sort of wondering what our pension strategy should be in regards to this. Should we retire early when a lot of us plan on working a few years longer to make ourselves in better financial situations over and above our pension plan? Or just what you advise us to do with what's happening with the government.
Thank you, Theodora. Heather Smith?
And Theodora, thank you for calling in. I do encourage you and your colleagues to go to the website and put in your specifics. In effect, the changes as of 2016 sort of create almost two separate pension plans. You'd have a plan for what you had prior to 2016 and a sort of a secondary one for what happens after that date. I don't think if you were planning on retiring early in 2016, there will be any significant change, but we are concerned. We already have a shortage of nurses here in the province. We are concerned about that run on the bank in terms of people thinking that if they don't retire prior to January 1, 2016, they will lose entirely, and that's not true. Go and look at the calculator and see what the actual impact is on you, and encourage your colleagues to do so as well.
Thank you, Heather. And now the results for poll question number 3. That question again was, would you like the Alberta Labour Coalition on Pensions and your union to contact you about developments on the pension issue? 93% said yes, 2% said no, and 5% said not sure. So thank you for your participation in that question. And now we have another question from the floor. Please, your name and affiliation and question.
Hi, thanks for hosting this event. My name is Chantal Favel Rubenstall. I'm actually the life partner of a person with CUPE. He's working tonight, so I'm here on our behalf. But I'm a member of PSAC, Local 30067. We're in the same fight regarding Bill C4, Bill 377, Bill 525. This legislation, federally as well as provincially, your Bill 45 and 46, is an attack on workers, especially younger workers and next generation, thereby increasing the gap between the rich and poor. I just put my notes, sorry if they're all over the place. I see unions as fighting for everyone to increase wages, what Elizabeth said, raising them up. I'm wondering, my questions are a couple or three. I'm wondering if your coalition is working with other unions, federal or provincial.
Gil McGowan?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Chantel, for your question. The first thing I'll say is actually in relation to your first comment. You pointed out that you yourself are not actually covered by one of the plans that we're talking about tonight, but your partner is. I actually think that's a really important point because what's happening with these changes is not just going to affect the 200,000 people who are paying into the plans right now, but each one of those 200,000 Albertans have partners, husbands, wives, children's dependents. So this change is going to have a ripple effect across families, across communities, and it's not just going to impact the people who pay into these plans. It's going to impact a much wider swath of the Alberta population. And just to give you an indication of how big an impact this might have on the Alberta economy, the local authorities pension plan, which is the biggest of the 4 Alberta pension plans, pays out a total of more than $750 million a year in pension benefits. That's money that's spent on Alberta businesses and spent in Alberta communities every month, so every year. So if we start undermining that stream of income to retired Albertans, that's going to hurt the retirees first and foremost, but it's going to hurt Alberta communities and the broader Alberta economy, and that's something that needs to be said. And as far as the broader question, I think Chantel is right that this attack on Alberta public sector pension plans is part of a broader attack that's being launched not only here in Alberta but across the country by conservative governments at the provincial and federal level against public sector workers, their wages and their benefits. The genesis of this attack is coming from the same place as Bill 377 and Bill 525 at the federal level, and also it's based on the same kind of thinking that brought us Bill 45 and 46 here in Alberta just a few months ago. So, we're, as members of the Labour Coalition on Pensions, we're very conscious of the fact that this fight that we're launching here is not just a fight to protect the pensions that we've built over years. It's also a fight to protect the broader workplace rights that the labor movement has won, and in fact, it's a fight to protect the Canadian middle class, because whether it's wages, workplace protections, or retirement security, these are things that working people have fought for and won over years, and we simply can't afford to let them slip away.
Thank you. And I'm pleased to thank you all for your excellent participation thus far. There's been a total of 2,200 participants in this town hall, and we thank you for your robust participation, so we are going slightly over time. We do have a few more things to include before we wrap up this evening. Now, I'm going to move to our last poll question of the night, and that question is, do you support the government's plans to alter your pension plan? Press 1 if you support the government's plan. Press 2 if you do not support the government's plan. Press 3 if you need more information to decide. Press 4 if you don't know. Once again, that question is, do you support the government's plans to alter your pension plan? Press 1 if you support the government's plan. Press 2 if you do not support the government's plan. Press 3 if you need more information to decide. And press 4 if you don't know. Now we have one other phone question that is from Kim of QP 38 in Calgary, and her question is, what are we going to do? Kim, please, your question.
Good evening. Thank you for taking my call. Luckily, I asked it so early, you've answered most of it. on exactly what we're going to do. I'd like to thank the coalition for the work they've been doing. Keep up the hard work. Get the information out to us, and we'll run with it.
Thank you, Kim. And now's another great time to mention the website address, truthaboutalbertapensions.ca. And so one final call for any questions in the room. Oh, yes, thank you. Your name and affiliation, please.
Hi, I'm Carol Chapman, QP 3550 education worker in Edmonton. Like Kim, I'd like to thank the coalition for their hard work and bringing this issue forward to all the members of any pension plan period. We happen to be focused on PSPP and LAPP, but as all of us, or most of us in this room are aware, there's a tax across the country to all the private pension plans, and they're not stopping with us. I'd also like to congratulate you for bringing Brendan George in with the actuarial reports. Contrary to what Mr. Horner says, we are not sticking our heads in the sand and pretending that this is not a problem. There is some hard concrete facts to actually demonstrate that we do, that you do know what you're talking about, and that they are manufacturing a pension crisis. I'm concerned about all people who are in the position of making decisions on their pension plans, but I'm even more concerned about my kids and the youth of our country and our province, because there's some small-minded people in our government that are making decisions based on what they believe is to be a short-term gain. They are a provincial employer that comes down with the hammer. We just saw in the legislature Bill 45 and 46, where they just make their own rules, and as an employer they're thinking, all right, this is a great way to save employer contributions at the sacrifice of quality of life for us now and for our future generations. And we have the opportunity as general public, as workers, as members of pension plans, or people who wish to belong to pension plans and unfortunately don't have that opportunity, to lobby, to email, phone, harass, whatever you have to do with your MLA and your MPs. And I would absolutely love to see on March 3rd, the first day of legislation, we have so many workers that we're backed up right to Jasper Avenue. That would send a clear message to this government, and they do tend to drop the pebble in the water and see how big the ripple's going to be. And if there is a strong public reaction to this, folks, we can make them change their minds.
Appropriately strong words and a rallying cry for the last live question of the evening. And is there anyone else on the panel who'd like to address that? Yes.
I just want to comment, this is Heather from UNA. There's a whole issue about fairness throughout all of this, and pensions and other things. But what's really distasteful is that this government is hoping to divide and conquer. They want us to sell off our young and future generations. And I think it's really important, particularly for people who go to the pension calculator and find that they may not be significantly affected because so much of their service is pre-2016, that they don't just walk away and say, oh, I'm not affected. They should be thinking about their colleagues, their children, and future generations. And, we should not accept this divide and conquer and selling off of our young and the future generations.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. I have the results from our last poll question, and I will announce them now. That question was, do you support the government's plan to alter your pension plan? And 1% said you support the government's plan. 94% said you do not support the government's plan. 5% said you need more information to decide. And 0% said you don't know. And so, I'd like to thank everyone for their questions. This has been a really terrific discussion, and I've been honored to be a part of it. Unfortunately, we're now going to have to wrap up the event as we are almost out of time. It's been a pleasure hearing some excellent questions from the audience and speaking with you, Brendan, Heather, Marley, Elizabeth, and Gil. And Gil was going to make a few final remarks, I believe, so over to you, Gil McGowan.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. On behalf of the Alberta Labour Coalition on Pensions, I just want to thank everyone in the studio audience for spending your evening with us, and especially I'd like to thank the thousands of people who have joined us on the telephone lines to engage in this important discussion. And before you go, I just want you to remember three things. First, that what the government is proposing is completely unnecessary. The big public sector pension plans here in Alberta are healthy, and as Brendan has shown in his actuarial report on sustainability, these plans are actually getting healthier. There is simply no justification for this attack on our pension plans. Second, I want people to understand just how serious these changes will be for the benefits earned by people paying into these plans. These are not small tweaks. If the government is successful in pushing forward these ill-advised plans, then public sector workers in this province are going to be paying more and working longer for benefits that are smaller and much less secure. And these changes are going to fall particularly heavy on younger workers. And as Heather said, we simply can't pull up the ladder. We need to do everything we can to protect the interest of younger workers in the public sector. And finally, and probably most importantly, we want to send the message to everyone participating in this town hall, both in person and on the phone, that it's not enough simply to be right. The good news is that we are. The facts are on our side. These plans are sustainable. It's not good enough to simply put out a good argument. We actually have to start mobilizing our members to show the government that there will be a price to be paid at the next election if they persist in these ill-advised changes to our pension plan. So with that regard, we need your help. We need your help. We need you to call your MLAs. We need you to participate in public events like rallies. We need you to make your concern and your opposition known to members of the Legislative Assembly and make them understand that there will be a price to be paid for these unjustified attacks on public sector pension plans in Alberta. Thanks again for coming.
And a reminder to those of you on the phone that you do have the opportunity to leave Gil McGowan a message at the end of the call. And now I would like to thank you for participating in this important conversation with us this evening, and thank you for helping to defend the retirement security of Albertans. Please take a moment to let us know what you think and ask any questions you didn't get a chance to ask live, and stay informed via the website truthaboutalbertapensions.ca. Good night, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.